Soft golden light filtered through the branches of the old oak trees, casting dappled shadows across the lawn. White tents had been arranged around the perimeter, their canvas glowing in the afternoon sun, sheltering tables laden with delicate finger foods and crystal pitchers of lemonade and iced tea. Garlands of fresh flowers, peonies and roses, and soft sprays of baby's breath wound around every surface, their fragrance drifting through the warm September air. A three-tiered cake stood on a pedestal near the center of the gathering, its pale pink frosting decorated with tiny fondant storks and the words, "Welcome, little one," written in elegant script. I had planned this day for months, not just the party, though every detail had been chosen with care, every flower arranged with love, but the life it celebrated. 7 years of trying, 7 years of hope and heartbreak, of negative tests and failed treatments, of watching other women's bellies swell while mine remained stubbornly flat. 7 years of smiling through baby showers and first birthday parties, and the casual cruelty of people asking when we were going to start a family, as if we hadn't been trying, as if every month wasn't a small death of possibility. And now, finally, I was 7 months pregnant. My daughter, we had chosen the name Lily, after my grandmother, moved inside me with gentle, rolling kicks, a constant reminder that this was real, that the years of waiting were over, that I was going to be a mother. The guests had arrived throughout the afternoon, filling the garden with laughter and conversation. My mother was there, her eyes bright with tears she refused to shed, her hand squeezing mine every time she passed. My best friend, Priya, had flown in from Chicago, surprising me with a hand-knit blanket in soft shades of cream and lavender. My husband, David, moved through the crowd with quiet pride, his hand resting on the small of my back whenever he was near. His smile, the same smile I had fallen in love with a decade ago. And Rebecca was there, my sister-in-law, David's younger sister, the woman who had spent the entire afternoon making jokes that weren't really jokes, her voice carrying across the garden with the particular brightness of someone who wanted to be heard. "Sarah, you're absolutely glowing. Or is that just the sweat from carrying around all that extra weight?" A tinkling laugh, a pat on my arm that was meant to look affectionate. I'm kidding. You look beautiful for someone who swallowed a beach ball. She's hilarious," I murmured to David, who squeezed my hand and offered a tight, apologetic smile. He knew. He had grown up with Rebecca, had spent his entire life watching her command every room, every gathering, every moment that should have belonged to someone else. He had learned long ago that confronting her only made things worse. Rebecca thrived on conflict. She fed on attention, and any attention, even negative, was better than none. "Just ignore her," he whispered. "Today is about you, about us, about Lily. She can't take that away." I nodded and tried to believe him. The afternoon wore on. Rebecca continued her campaign of small, sharp comments disguised as humor. When I declined a glass of champagne, she laughed and said, "Oh, that's right. You're on the wagon. For the next 18 years, actually. Enjoy your sparkling cider." When the conversation turned to nursery themes, she rolled her eyes theatrically. "Honestly, all this baby talk is so boring. Can't we discuss something interesting? Politics, celebrity gossip, anything but diapers and sleep schedules?" The other guests exchanged uncomfortable glances. My mother's lips pressed into a thin line. Priya looked like she wanted to say something, but held back, catching my eye with a silent question. "Do you want me to handle her?" I shook my head slightly. "Not yet. Not here. I didn't want a scene. I just wanted to get through the afternoon, to open my gifts, to celebrate the daughter I had waited so long to meet." The gift table was piled high with packages in soft pastels, pink and yellow and pale green, tiny clothes, soft blankets, a mobile of felted animals that played a gentle lullaby. I settled into the chair that had been arranged for me, my hands resting on my belly, and reached for the first gift. It was from my mother, wrapped in paper printed with tiny roses, and I knew without opening it that it would be something beautiful and heartfelt and perfectly chosen. I was just about to untie the ribbon when Rebecca stood up. The movement was deliberate, theatrical. She rose from her chair near the back of the gathering, a glass of champagne in her hand. She had been drinking all afternoon, I noticed, refilling her glass more often than anyone else, and tapped a spoon against its rim. The clear, bright sound cut through the murmur of conversation like a bell. "Everyone, everyone, can I have your attention, please?" The garden fell silent. Heads turned. My mother's hand, which had been reaching for her own glass, froze in midair. David's face beside me went very still. Rebecca was smiling, a wide, radiant smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She waited until every face was turned toward her, until the silence was absolute, until she was certain that she was the center of attention. "I have a much more exciting announcement," she declared, her voice carrying across the lawn. "I'm finally pregnant too." The words hung in the air like a stone dropped into still water. A collective gasp rippled through the gathering. Someone, I think it was David's Aunt Carol, let out a small, delighted shriek. Others began to clap, uncertain at first, then, with growing enthusiasm. Rebecca's smile widened, drinking in the attention like a flower turning toward the sun. "I guess we'll be sharing the nursery, Sarah," she added, her eyes finding mine across the lawn. There was a gleam in them, a bright, sharp satisfaction that made my stomach clench. "Won't that be fun? Our little ones growing up together, cousins just a few months apart. It's like a fairy tale." The guests turned to me, their faces a mixture of surprise and expectation. They were waiting for my reaction, waiting for me to smile, to embrace Rebecca, to welcome this unexpected twist in the narrative of the afternoon. That was what a good sister-in-law would do. That was what a gracious guest of honor would do. But I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. My hands, still resting on the unopened gift in my lap, had gone cold. 7 years. 7 years of trying, of hoping, of watching other women announce their pregnancies, while I smiled and congratulated them and went home to cry in the shower where no one could hear. 7 years of Rebecca knowing exactly how much I had struggled, how many times I had broken down, how desperately I had wanted this child. And she had chosen today, my baby shower, my celebration, my moment to make her announcement. She hadn't just stolen my spotlight. She had taken something far more precious. She had taken the joy that should have been mine, the attention that should have been focused on the daughter I had waited so long to meet, and she had redirected it toward herself. She had made my baby shower about her. David's hand found mine under the table. His grip was tight, grounding, a silent anchor in the storm of my emotions. "Sarah," he whispered, his voice low and urgent. "Sarah, look at me." I looked at him. His face was pale, his jaw tight. He was angry. I could see it in the set of his shoulders, the way his eyes had hardened when he looked at his sister. But beneath the anger, there was something else, something that looked almost like guilt, as if he had known somehow that Rebecca was capable of this, and he had hoped, foolishly, desperately, that she wouldn't go through with it. "I didn't know," he said, reading my thoughts. "I swear to God, Sarah, I didn't know she was going to do this." I believed him. David had spent his entire life being blindsided by his sister's cruelty, always hoping she would be better, always believing that this time would be different. It never was. Rebecca was who she was, and she would never change. But I had changed. The years of struggle, the years of heartbreak, the years of watching other people take what I so desperately wanted, they had changed me. I was no longer the woman who smiled and nodded and absorbed the casual cruelties of others because I was too afraid to make a scene. I was a mother now, or I would be, in just a few short months, and mothers protected their children, even from family, even from the people who were supposed to love them. I looked at Rebecca. She was still standing, still basking in the attention, still wearing that bright, sharp smile. Her hand rested on her flat stomach in a gesture that was meant to be maternal, but looked to my eyes like a performance, a costume, a lie. Because I knew something I had discovered by accident weeks ago and had kept to myself because I didn't know what to do with it. Something that changed everything. Rebecca wasn't pregnant. I had seen the birth control prescription in her bathroom, the one she had refilled just last month. I had overheard her on the phone with a friend, laughing about how desperate some women were to have babies, how she couldn't imagine ruining her body like that. I had watched her drink champagne all afternoon, not a single glass, not a celebratory sip, but glass after glass, refilling without hesitation. A pregnant woman might have one small glass perhaps, if her doctor approved, but Rebecca had been drinking like someone with nothing to protect. She was lying. She had announced a pregnancy that didn't exist on my day to steal my joy and center herself in the narrative. She had taken the most painful, hard-won celebration of my life and turned it into a stage for her own performance. The room was still waiting. The guests were still watching. Rebecca's smile was beginning to falter, just slightly, as I remained silent. I rose from my chair. The movement was slow, deliberate, my hand steady on the arms of the seat as I pushed myself up. My belly, round and full with my daughter, preceded me. Lily kicked once, twice, as if reminding me that she was there, that she was real, that this was our moment and no one else's. "Rebecca," I said. My voice was calm, clear, carrying across the silent garden. "That's wonderful news, truly. I'm so happy for you." Her smile widened, triumphant. She thought I was conceding. She thought I was playing the role of the gracious, defeated sister-in-law, stepping aside to let her shine. I took a breath. "But there's just one thing I don't understand," I continued, my voice still calm, still pleasant. "If you're pregnant, why have you been drinking champagne all afternoon? And why did I see you refill your birth control prescription last month?" The silence that followed was absolute. It was not the comfortable silence of people waiting for a punchline. It was the terrible, suffocating silence of people watching a world crumble. Rebecca's face went white. Her hand, still resting on her flat stomach, began to tremble. I don't know what you're talking about. I would never. That's ridiculous. You're just jealous because I'm pregnant too. You can't stand that someone else is getting attention." "I'm not jealous," I said quietly. "I'm just confused because a woman who is truly pregnant, a woman who has been trying, who has been hoping, who understands what a miracle it is to carry a child, doesn't drink champagne at her sister-in-law's baby shower, and she doesn't refill her birth control prescription, and she doesn't announce her pregnancy on someone else's day, stealing a moment that was never hers to take." Rebecca's mouth opened and closed. No words came. Around her, the guests were stirring, their expression shifting from shock to confusion to dawning understanding. David's mother, Margaret, had gone pale. David himself was staring at his sister with an expression I had never seen before. Not anger, not disappointment, but something colder, something final. "I think," I said, my voice still calm, still steady, "that you should sit down now, Rebecca, and maybe have some water. You've had a lot to drink." She didn't sit. She stood frozen, her face a ruin of humiliation and rage, and the terrible realization that she had been exposed. The spotlight she had stolen was burning her alive, and everyone was watching. I turned away from her and sat back down in my chair. I picked up the gift from my mother, the one wrapped in paper printed with tiny roses, and untied the ribbon. Inside was a handmade quilt, each square embroidered with a different flower, each stitch placed with love. Lily's name was sewn into the corner, surrounded by a wreath of pale pink blossoms. I looked up at my mother, who was watching me with tears in her eyes, not tears of sadness, but of pride. "It's beautiful, Mom," I said. "Thank you." The garden party continued, though the atmosphere had shifted. Rebecca had retreated to the far corner of the lawn, her phone pressed to her ear, her voice low and frantic. The other guests returned to their conversations, their voices slightly too bright, their laughter slightly too forced. But I didn't care. I had my quilt, and my daughter kicking gently inside me, and my husband's hand in mine. The spotlight was mine again, not because I had stolen it, but because I had refused to let it be taken. And Rebecca, the spotlight thief, had learned a lesson she would not soon forget. Some truths could not be buried beneath a performance. Some lies, once exposed, could never be taken back. The days following the baby shower were a masterclass in performance. Rebecca, having been publicly humiliated in front of the entire family, did what Rebecca had always done when reality failed to cooperate with her narrative. She doubled down. The phone calls began the very next morning, first to her mother, Margaret, then to a carefully selected list of relatives and family friends, each conversation following the same script. I don't know what Sarah was talking about. I had one glass of champagne. One. My doctor said it was fine. And the birth control thing, that was for a friend. Sarah must have misunderstood. She's always been so sensitive about the pregnancy thing. I think the hormones are making her paranoid. Margaret, who had spent her entire life enabling her daughter's behavior, accepted this explanation with visible relief. Confronting Rebecca's lies would have required acknowledging that she had raised a daughter capable of such deception, and Margaret was not prepared to do that. It was easier to believe that Sarah, the daughter-in-law, the outsider, the woman who had struggled for years to conceive, was simply emotional and misunderstood. David's father, Robert, a quiet man who had long ago surrendered to the dominant women in his life, said nothing at all. He simply nodded and retreated to his study, where he could pretend that his family was not crumbling around him. And Rebecca, emboldened by her mother's acceptance and her father's silence, escalated. The symptoms began on Tuesday. I was at home, my feet propped up on the couch, a cup of herbal tea cooling on the side table, when my phone buzzed with a text from Margaret in the family group chat. Rebecca is feeling so unwell today. Terrible morning sickness, but she's being so brave about it. Please keep her in your thoughts. Attached was a photo of Rebecca reclining on a chaise lounge in her immaculate living room, one hand pressed delicately to her forehead, the other resting on her perfectly flat stomach. She was wearing a flowing white blouse and a pained, noble expression, the look of a woman suffering beautifully for a noble cause. The lighting was flattering. The angle was carefully chosen. It looked less like a candid snapshot and more like a still from a period drama about a consumptive poetess. I stared at the photo for a long moment. Then I set down my phone and picked up my tea. "She's not pregnant," I said aloud to the empty room. Lily kicked in response, as if agreeing with me. David came home that evening looking exhausted. He had spent the day fielding calls from relatives who wanted to check in about the situation at the baby shower, calls that were ostensibly supportive but were really just fishing for drama. His mother had called twice, each time insisting that Rebecca was devastated by my accusations and that I needed to make things right. His Aunt Carol had called to ask, in a tone of barely concealed excitement, whether it was true that Rebecca had been drinking at the shower. The family gossip machine was running at full speed, and Rebecca was feeding it with the skill of a woman who had spent her entire life mastering the art of manipulation. "I can't do this," David said, collapsing onto the couch beside me. "I can't spend the next 7 months watching her perform this lie. And my mother is enabling all of it. She actually asked me if I thought you might be jealous of Rebecca's pregnancy." Jealous of a pregnancy that doesn't exist? I took his hand. "I know, but we can't force people to see what they don't want to see. Your mother has spent 30 years believing Rebecca's version of reality. She's not going to stop now." Then what do we do? Just let her keep lying? Let her keep stealing attention from you, from Lily, from everything we've waited for? I was quiet for a moment. Then I reached for my phone and opened a photo I had taken 2 days before the baby shower, a photo I had hoped I would never need to use. "I saw her at the pharmacy," I said quietly. "I didn't tell you because I thought maybe I was overreacting. Maybe it was for a prank or a friend or something innocent. But after the shower, after everything she's done," I handed him the phone. The photo showed Rebecca standing at the checkout counter of the local pharmacy, a small basket in her hand. The image was slightly grainy. I had taken it from across the store, not wanting to be seen, but the contents of the basket were clearly visible. a box of what appeared to be ultrasound prints, the kind sold by theatrical supply companies for film and television productions, and beneath it, barely visible but unmistakable, a flesh-colored silicone object that could only be one thing: a prosthetic pregnancy belly. David stared at the photo. His face went pale, then red. She bought a fake bump and fake ultrasound pictures. She's been planning this. It gets worse. I took the phone back and opened a second photo, a screenshot of a theatrical supply website showing the exact products Rebecca had purchased. The deluxe pregnancy simulation kit included 3 realistic ultrasound images, a silicone belly in 3 progressive sizes, and a guide to convincingly portraying pregnancy symptoms. The reviews were filled with actors praising the kit's authenticity. One reviewer had written, "Used this for a role in an independent film. My own mother thought I was really pregnant." David set down the phone and buried his face in his hands. "My sister, my own sister, she bought a costume to fake a pregnancy, to steal your baby shower, to reclaim her status," I said quietly. "She's always been the favorite, the center of attention, the one everyone fusses over. And then I got pregnant, really pregnant, after years of trying, and suddenly the family's attention shifted. She couldn't stand it, so she created a pregnancy of her own, a performance, a lie." He looked up at me, his eyes red. "What do we do?" I thought about the weeks ahead, Rebecca's theatrical morning sickness, and her carefully staged photos, the inevitable baby bump that would appear, growing in perfect, improbable proportion to the silicone prosthetics she had purchased, the ultrasound pictures she would show off, printed from the very kit I had seen in her basket, the slow, elaborate construction of a lie designed to center herself in the family's attention while diminishing the genuine miracle I was carrying. "We wait," I said finally. "We let her perform. We let her dig herself deeper and deeper into this deception. And when the moment is right, we reveal the truth. Not in anger, not in vengeance. Just the truth, the photos, the website, the kit she bought, everything." David was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "And my mother? She's going to be devastated. She's already planning a cousin shower for Rebecca. She's already talking about how wonderful it will be to have 2 grandchildren so close together." "I know." I squeezed his hand. "But your mother is an adult. She chose to believe Rebecca's lies because it was easier than confronting the truth. That's not our fault, and it's not our job to protect her from the consequences of her own choices." He looked at me, his eyes searching my face. "You're so calm about this. How are you so calm?" I placed my hand on my belly, feeling Lily stir beneath my palm. "Because I have something real, something true, something she can never take away from me, no matter how many performances she puts on. She can fake a pregnancy. She can steal attention and manipulate the family and play the victim. But she can't fake this." I pressed his hand to my stomach, letting him feel his daughter move. "This is real. This is ours. And no amount of silicone or fake ultrasounds or theatrical morning sickness can change that." He leaned his forehead against mine, his breath warm and unsteady. "I love you," he whispered. "I love you, and I love Lily, and I'm sorry my family is insane." I laughed, a small, genuine laugh, the first I had managed in days. "I knew what I was signing up for when I married you. The family was part of the package. Unfortunately." We sat together in the quiet of our living room, the evening light fading outside the windows, our daughter moving between us like a promise. Somewhere across town, Rebecca was probably staging another photo, composing another text about her symptoms, weaving another thread into the elaborate fiction she had constructed. Let her perform, let her dig herself deeper. The truth was patient, and when the moment came, it would be undeniable. The cousin shower was announced 3 weeks later. Margaret, in her endless campaign to normalize Rebecca's deception, had decided that what the family needed was a celebration of both pregnancies, a joint shower where Rebecca and I would be honored together. The invitation arrived in the mail on a cream-colored card embossed with gold foil, the language carefully neutral. "Join us in celebrating the upcoming arrivals of the newest members of the Sterling family. A joint shower honoring Sarah and Rebecca. Sunday, October 15th at 2 p.m. The Harrington Club." I stared at the invitation for a long time. The Harrington Club, the same venue where Rebecca had tried to steal my baby shower, the same room where she had stood up and announced her fake pregnancy, her hand on her flat stomach, her champagne glass raised in a toast to herself. "She's really doing this," I said to David. "She's really going to stand in front of everyone and pretend to be pregnant, with a silicone bump and fake ultrasound pictures." He took the invitation from my hand and read it, his jaw tight. "My mother is helping her. She's actually helping her perpetuate this lie. Your mother believes it. Rebecca has convinced her. The morning sickness, the symptoms, the careful way she's been dressing. Margaret wants to believe. She wants the fantasy of 2 grandchildren, 2 happy families, the perfect picture she's always imagined. And when the truth comes out," I looked at him, "when the truth comes out, your mother will have to face what she's been enabling. That's not our responsibility. Our only responsibility is to our daughter, to protecting what's real." David folded the invitation and set it on the counter. "Then we go. We let her perform, and when the moment is right, we show them the truth." The Harrington Club was decorated exactly as it had been for my baby shower. The same white tents, the same crystal chandeliers, the same soft golden light filtering through the tall windows. Garlands of fresh flowers wound around every surface, peonies and roses and soft sprays of baby's breath, identical to the ones I had chosen for my own celebration. Margaret had clearly instructed the florist to replicate the earlier event, as if by recreating the setting she could rewrite what had happened there, as if enough flowers and enough champagne and enough determined cheerfulness could erase the memory of Rebecca's exposure. I arrived early, as I always did. David walked beside me, his hand resting on the small of my back, his presence steady and grounding. I was wearing a simple cream dress that skimmed over my belly, my mother's pearl earrings, and a calm, pleasant expression that revealed nothing of what I was carrying. Not just Lily moving inside me with gentle, rolling kicks. Something else. A small, flat box wrapped in pale pink paper tucked beneath the other gifts on the table near the entrance. The guests began to arrive, the same constellation of family and friends who had witnessed Rebecca's announcement and its aftermath. David's parents, his Aunt Carol, the cousins and second cousins, and family friends who had been drafted into the audience for Rebecca's performance. They moved through the room with the slightly too bright energy of people who were determined to pretend that nothing was wrong. They complimented the decorations. They admired my growing belly. They asked polite questions about Lily's nursery and my due date, and whether we had chosen a middle name yet. And they avoided mentioning Rebecca. Not directly, of course. They mentioned her constantly. Her glow, her bravery in the face of difficult circumstances, her exciting news. But they did not mention the baby shower. They did not mention the champagne. They did not mention the birth control prescription or the long, terrible silence that had followed my words. They talked around the truth as if it were a hole in the floor, something to be skirted carefully lest anyone fall in. Rebecca arrived 20 minutes late, as she always did. She swept through the doors in a flowing ivory dress, a color that was traditionally reserved for the guest of honor at a baby shower, a detail that was surely not lost on anyone, with one hand pressed delicately to her lower back and the other resting on her stomach. Her belly, which had been perfectly flat at my shower, now curved gently beneath the fabric of her dress. The prosthetic, she was wearing it. She had actually strapped on a silicone pregnancy belly and walked into a room full of people, daring them to question her. Margaret rushed to embrace her, tears in her eyes. "Oh, Rebecca, you look absolutely radiant. Pregnancy agrees with you, darling. You're glowing." "Thank you, Mother." Rebecca's voice was soft, brave, the voice of a woman enduring a great trial with quiet dignity. "I've been so tired lately. The morning sickness has been dreadful, but I keep telling myself it will all be worth it when I hold my little one in my arms." She said this last part while looking directly at me, her eyes bright with challenge. "Try to expose me now," that look said. "Try to prove I'm lying. No one will believe you. They want this fantasy too much." I smiled at her, a calm, pleasant smile that revealed nothing. "You do look lovely, Rebecca. That dress is beautiful. Is it new?" She blinked. momentarily thrown by my kindness. "Yes, actually, I bought it just for today. I wanted something special to celebrate." "How thoughtful of you." I let my hand rest on my own belly, feeling Lily stir. "I'm sure it will be a day to remember." The shower proceeded as these events always do. There were games, guess the baby food, match the celebrity baby photo, a complicated relay involving diapers and blindfolds that ended in laughter and spilled lemonade. There was food, delicate sandwiches and fresh fruit, and a cake decorated with 2 sets of tiny fondant booties, one pink and one blue. There were gifts piled high on the table near the entrance, wrapped in pastels and tied with elaborate bows. Rebecca received a cascade of presents. Margaret had clearly spread the word that her daughter needed extra support, and the guests had responded with an outpouring of generosity. Tiny clothes, soft blankets, a silver rattle that had belonged to David's grandmother, which Margaret presented with tears streaming down her face. "This was supposed to go to the first grandchild," she said, her voice trembling. "But I think it's only fair that both of my grandchildren share in the family legacy." David's hand tightened on mine under the table. The rattle had been promised to Lily. Margaret had told us months ago that it would be our daughter's inheritance, a piece of family history passed down through generations. And now she was giving it to Rebecca, to a pregnancy that didn't exist, to a lie. I squeezed his hand back, a silent promise. "Wait, not yet. The moment is coming." Rebecca accepted the rattle with tears in her eyes. Real tears, I thought, though not for the reasons everyone assumed. She was crying because she had won, because she had taken everything, the attention, the gifts, the family heirlooms, and no one had stopped her, because her performance was so convincing, so complete, that even the people who had witnessed her exposure at my shower were beginning to doubt their own memories. She looked at me across the room, her hand resting on her silicone belly, and smiled. It was a small, private smile, meant only for me. A smile that said, "I won. You have the real baby, but I have everything else, and there's nothing you can do about it." I smiled back. Then I rose from my chair. The room fell silent. Conversations trailed off. Heads turned toward me, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. They remembered what had happened at the last shower. They were waiting to see what I would do. "Rebecca," I said, my voice warm and pleasant, "I have a gift for you, to celebrate your big news." Her smile faltered, just slightly. "Oh, Sarah, you didn't have to do that. We're both expectant mothers. We should be celebrating each other." I wanted to. I walked to the gift table and picked up the small, flat box wrapped in pale pink paper. It was light in my hands, almost weightless, but I could feel the truth inside it, dense and undeniable. "I saw this and thought of you immediately. I hope you like it." I handed her the box. The room watched in silence. Margaret was beaming, delighted that her daughters-in-law were finally getting along. David's father looked vaguely uncomfortable, as if sensing something he couldn't quite name. The other guests leaned forward, curious. Rebecca took the box. Her hands, I noticed, were trembling slightly. "You really shouldn't have," she said again, her voice a little too bright. "Open it." She hesitated. Then, with the careful deliberation of a woman who suspected she was walking into a trap but could not see a way out, she untied the ribbon and lifted the lid. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a receipt from the theatrical supply company whose website I had photographed weeks ago, the one that sold the deluxe pregnancy simulation kit. The receipt showed the purchase date 2 days before my baby shower, and the items bought: 1 silicone pregnancy belly, size medium, 1 set of realistic ultrasound prints, standard package, 1 guide to convincingly portraying pregnancy symptoms. Beneath the receipt was a second sheet of paper, a printout of the fake ultrasound template Rebecca had downloaded, the same image she had been showing to family members as proof of her pregnancy. The template number matched the one on the receipt. The website URL was printed at the bottom of the page. Rebecca's face went white. "What is it, darling?" Margaret leaned forward, trying to see. "What did Sarah give you?" Rebecca said nothing. She couldn't speak. Her hands were shaking so violently that the box slipped from her fingers and clattered to the floor, the papers spilling out across the pale carpet for everyone to see. I bent down, slowly, carefully, my pregnant belly making the movement awkward, and picked up the papers. I held them up so the room could see. Rebecca bought a pregnancy simulation kit, I said, my voice calm and clear. 2 days before my baby shower, she bought a silicone belly, fake ultrasound pictures, and a guide to faking pregnancy symptoms. She's been wearing the belly for weeks. She's been showing everyone the same fake ultrasound image that came with the kit. I paused, letting the words settle. Rebecca isn't pregnant. She never was. She invented this pregnancy to steal attention from me and my daughter. And she's been lying to everyone in this room for months. The silence that followed was absolute. It was not the comfortable silence of people processing information. It was the terrible, suffocating silence of a world collapsing. Margaret's face crumpled. That's not. Rebecca, tell her that's not true. Tell her she's lying. Rebecca opened her mouth, but no words came. Her face was a ruin of shock and humiliation, and the terrible realization that there was no escape. The evidence was in her hands, or rather on the floor, scattered across the carpet for everyone to see. The receipt, the ultrasound template, the undeniable proof of her deception. I saw her at the pharmacy, I continued, my voice still calm. I saw the kit in her basket. I took photographs. I have the website screenshots. I've had this evidence for weeks, but I waited. I hoped, foolishly perhaps, that she would come clean on her own, that she would admit the truth, and we could move past this as a family. I looked at Rebecca, my eyes steady, but she didn't. She doubled down. She staged photos of morning sickness. She wore the prosthetic belly. She accepted gifts and heirlooms meant for a real child. She let everyone in this room believe a lie because she couldn't stand not being the center of attention. Margaret was crying now, great heaving sobs that shook her whole body. David's father had gone pale, his hands gripping the arms of his chair. The other guests stared at Rebecca with expressions that ranged from shock to disgust to the particular horror of people who had been made fools of. Rebecca's face contorted. For a moment, I saw not the performer, not the manipulator, but something raw and desperate beneath. You don't understand, she whispered. You don't know what it's like. Everyone was so focused on you, on your perfect pregnancy, your perfect life, your perfect little family. I was invisible. For the first time in my life, I was invisible, and I couldn't stand it. You were never invisible, I said quietly. You just weren't the center of attention. There's a difference. She stared at me, her eyes red and swollen. Then, without another word, she turned and fled from the room. The door slammed behind her, and the silence returned, thicker now, heavier, filled with the wreckage of her deception. I looked at Margaret, who was still crying, her face buried in her hands. I looked at David's father, who had not moved, his expression unreadable. I looked at the other guests, who were beginning to stir, murmuring to each other in low, shocked voices. Then I looked at David. His face was pale, but his eyes were clear. He reached for my hand and squeezed it, a silent message passing between us. It's done. The truth is out. We can move forward now. I placed my other hand on my belly, feeling Lily move beneath my palm. She was real. She was true. And no amount of silicone or fake ultrasounds or theatrical performances could ever change that. Papers scattered across the pale carpet like fallen leaves. The receipt, the ultrasound template, the undeniable evidence of Rebecca's deception. The room was frozen, suspended in a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity. Margaret's sobs had quieted to ragged, hitching breaths. David's father sat motionless, his face a mask of shock and something that might have been the first stirrings of long-suppressed anger. The other guests stared at the papers, at Rebecca, at me, their expressions cycling through confusion and horror, and the particular discomfort of people who had just realized they had been made fools. Rebecca stood alone in the center of the room, her ivory dress glowing under the crystal chandeliers, her hand still pressed protectively, possessively, to her curved belly. Her face was pale, her eyes wide, but her chin was lifted in defiance. Even now, even with the evidence scattered scattered at her feet. She was performing. She was calculating. She was searching for an escape. My mother-in-law's voice cut through the silence, thin and trembling. "What is this, Sarah? What have you done?" I did not look away from Rebecca. "It's the receipt for the stage prop belly Rebecca is wearing right now. I saw her buying it on Tuesday at the theatrical supply store on Westbrook Avenue. She purchased a deluxe pregnancy simulation kit, silicone belly, fake ultrasounds, and a guide to faking pregnancy symptoms. The receipt is dated 2 days before my baby shower." Margaret's face crumpled further. "That's not possible. Rebecca, tell her that's not possible. Tell her she's mistaken." Rebecca's mouth opened, but for a long, terrible moment, no sound emerged. Then she laughed, a bright, brittle sound that shattered the silence like glass. "Oh, Sarah. Oh, you poor thing. This is a joke, a prank. I bought that kit for a friend who's doing a community theater production. She needed it for her role. I was just helping her out." "A friend," I repeated. "Yes, a friend. You've completely misunderstood." She was gaining confidence now, her voice smoothing into the familiar cadence of performance. "I can't believe you would go through all this trouble, following me, taking photographs, printing receipts, just because you can't stand that someone else is getting attention. It's honestly a little sad, Sarah. I think the pregnancy hormones are really affecting your judgment." The guests stirred, their expressions shifting. Rebecca was good at this. She had spent a lifetime perfecting the art of turning accusations back on her accusers. Already, I could see doubt creeping into some of their faces. Was it possible? Could Sarah really be so jealous, so unstable, that she would fabricate this elaborate conspiracy? I did not argue. I did not defend myself. I simply looked at Rebecca, my eyes steady, my hands resting on my very real, very pregnant belly. "If it's a joke," I said calmly, "then you won't mind proving it. Show us the belly, Rebecca. If it's real, you have nothing to hide." Her smile faltered. "Excuse me? Lift your dress. Show us your stomach. A real pregnant belly doesn't have seams. It doesn't shift to the side when you move. It doesn't come off at the end of the day." I paused, letting the words settle. "If you're really pregnant, prove it, right now, in front of everyone." The room went very still. Margaret looked at Rebecca, her eyes wide and pleading. David's father leaned forward in his chair, his expression sharpening. The other guests held their breath, waiting. Rebecca's face had gone from pale to gray. Her hand, still pressed to her belly, was trembling. That's completely inappropriate. I'm not going to lift my dress in front of everyone like some kind of—" "Then I will." I took a step toward her, not aggressive, not threatening, just calm, deliberate, inevitable. "I'll do it for you. If you won't show us the truth, I will." "Stay away from me." Rebecca's voice rose to a shrill edge. She stumbled backward, her heel catching on the edge of a gift bag that had been left on the floor. The bag tipped, spilling tissue paper across the carpet. Rebecca's arms windmilled as she fought for balance. She caught herself on the back of a chair, her body twisting awkwardly, and the bump shifted. It was subtle at first, a small, unnatural movement beneath the ivory fabric of her dress. Then, as she straightened, the silicone belly slid further, rotating toward her hip like a misplaced cushion. The synthetic edge became visible, a faint line where the prosthetic met her real skin, catching the light from the chandeliers above. For a moment, it seemed as if the entire room was holding its breath, watching the evidence of Rebecca's deception reveal itself in slow motion. She felt it happen. Her hand flew to her stomach, trying to push the prosthetic back into place, but it was too late. Too many people had seen. Too many eyes had registered the wrongness of what they were witnessing. The belly that moved independently of her body. The curve that was not flesh, but silicone. The lie made visible. The silence that followed was deafening. It was not the silence of shock or confusion. It was the silence of understanding, of recognition, of a room full of people finally seeing what had been right in front of them all along. Margaret made a small, wounded sound, not a sob, but something deeper, more primal. The sound of a mother whose entire understanding of her daughter had just collapsed. "Rebecca," she whispered. "Rebecca, what is that? What are you wearing?" Rebecca's face was a ruin. The confident performer was gone, replaced by something raw and desperate and utterly exposed. Her hands clutched at the displaced silicone, trying to force it back into position, but it was useless. The prosthetic had betrayed her. Her own body had betrayed her. The lie she had constructed so carefully over so many weeks was crumbling in front of everyone she had tried to deceive. "It's nothing," she said, her voice high and thin. It's a support band for my back. Pregnant women wear them all the time. It's completely normal. It's a stage prop," I said quietly. "From the Deluxe Pregnancy Simulation Kit, item number PSK-2847. I have the website screenshots. I have the product description. It's designed for actors, Rebecca, for performances. And that's exactly what this has been, a performance." Rebecca's eyes found mine across the room. For a moment, the mask slipped entirely, and I saw what lay beneath. Not remorse, not shame, but a cold, glittering fury. She hated me. She had always hated me, I realized. Not because of anything I had done, but because I existed. Because I had taken David's attention. Because I was carrying a real child, a genuine grandchild, while she could only pretend. Because I had what she could never earn, authenticity. "You did this," she hissed. "You planned this. You set me up. I didn't make you buy the kit, Rebecca. I didn't make you wear it. I didn't make you lie to everyone in this room for months. You did that yourself. I just stopped letting you get away with it." The room remained frozen, the guests caught between the instinct to look away from something so painfully intimate and the inability to stop watching. Margaret had risen from her chair, her face streaked with tears, her hands reaching toward her daughter and then falling back to her sides, as if she no longer knew how to touch her. David's father had finally moved. He was standing now, his expression hard and cold, the passivity of decades falling away. "Rebecca!" His voice was quiet, but it carried through the silent room with absolute authority. "Is this true? Have you been pretending to be pregnant?" She opened her mouth, but no words came. The lie had finally run out of room to breathe. The evidence was not just on paper anymore. It was visible, physical, undeniable. The silicone bump had shifted further, creating an unmistakable bulge at her hip, while her real stomach remained flat beneath the ivory fabric. She looked like what she was, a woman wearing a costume that no longer fit. Her voice cracked, "You just wanted attention," David said. His voice was quiet, but it held an edge I had never heard before. "You just wanted to be the center of everything, the way you always have. And when Sarah got pregnant, really pregnant, after years of trying, you couldn't stand it. So you created a fake pregnancy. You bought a costume. You lied to everyone. To me, to Mom, to Dad, to everyone in this room." He stepped forward, his face pale, but his eyes steady. "You took the rattle that was supposed to go to Lily. You took gifts meant for a real baby. You took Mom's joy and twisted it into something ugly. And for what? For attention? For the satisfaction of knowing you could make everyone believe a lie?" Rebecca's face crumpled. For the first time, I saw something other than performance in her eyes. Not remorse. I wasn't sure she was capable of that. But fear. Real fear. The fear of a woman who had spent her entire life manipulating others and was now facing the consequences. "David, please," she whispered. "I'm your sister. I felt so left out. Everyone was so focused on Sarah and the baby, and I was invisible. I couldn't stand it. I just wanted to be part of things. I just wanted to matter." "You matter," he said, his voice softening just slightly. "You've always mattered, but you didn't believe it, so you tried to take what wasn't yours. You tried to steal Sarah's joy, her moment, her truth, and you did it by lying to everyone who loves you." He looked at the displaced silicone bump, the synthetic edges visible beneath her dress. "Take it off, Rebecca. Take it off and go home. We'll talk about this later, when there aren't 50 people watching." She stared at him for a long moment. Then, with trembling hands, she reached beneath her dress and removed the prosthetic. It came away in one piece, a flesh-colored silicone curve, hollow and empty, designed to mimic life but containing nothing. She held it for a moment, looking at it as if she had never seen it before. Then she dropped it to the floor, where it landed with a soft, pathetic thud. Without another word, she turned and walked out of the room. The door closed behind her with a quiet click, and the silence returned. Different now. Not shocked, not horrified, just empty. The emptiness of a performance that had finally ended, leaving nothing behind but the wreckage of its own deception. Margaret sank back into her chair, her face buried in her hands. David's father moved to stand beside her, his hand resting awkwardly on her shoulder. Guests began to stir, murmuring to each other in low voices, gathering their things, preparing to leave. The party was over. The lie was exposed, and whatever came next, it would not include Rebecca's performance. I walked to David and took his hand. He looked at me, his eyes red but clear. "It's done," he said quietly. "She's gone. The truth is out." I nodded. "I know." We stood together in the center of the room, surrounded by the remnants of the shower, the gifts, the flowers, the cake, with its 2 sets of tiny fondant booties. One set was for Lily. The other was for a child that had never existed, a pregnancy that had been nothing but silicone and lies. Lily kicked gently inside me, a small, insistent reminder of what was real. I placed my hand on my belly and felt her move, alive and growing, and utterly, undeniably true. The physical reveal was complete. Rebecca's deception had been exposed not just by paper evidence, but by her own body. The prosthetic bump that shifted and betrayed her, the lie made visible for everyone to see. The family had witnessed the truth, and there was no going back. The Harrington Club emptied slowly, like water draining from a basin. The guests departed in small clusters, their voices low and careful, their eyes avoiding the corner where Rebecca's silicone belly still lay abandoned on the pale carpet. It sat there like a strange, hollow creature, a prop that had served its purpose and been discarded, leaving behind only the uncomfortable evidence of its own artificiality. No one wanted to touch it. No one wanted to acknowledge it, but no one could look away. Margaret had to be helped to her car by David's father, her face pale and swollen from crying, her movements mechanical and unseeing. She had spent 30 years enabling Rebecca's behavior, believing every performance, excusing every cruelty. And now, in the space of a single afternoon, the entire edifice of her denial had collapsed. She kept repeating the same phrase over and over, like a prayer she hoped would change reality. She wouldn't do this. She wouldn't lie to me. She's my daughter. She wouldn't do this. But Rebecca had done it. The evidence was scattered across the floor. The receipt, the ultrasound template, the silicone belly that had shifted and betrayed her. The truth was undeniable, and Margaret, for the first time in her life, could not look away. David's father, Robert, had not spoken since his single, devastating question. "Is this true?" He walked beside his wife with the stiff, mechanical gait of a man who had just discovered that his entire understanding of his family was built on a foundation of lies. He did not look back at the party. He did not look at the silicone belly on the floor. He simply walked forward into a future he had not chosen and did not know how to navigate. The other relatives, aunts, uncles, cousins, filed out with murmured apologies and awkward embraces. Aunt Carol squeezed my hand and whispered, "You were so brave, dear, so brave." A cousin I barely knew pressed a gift into my hands, a soft pink blanket, originally meant for Rebecca's fictional child, and said, "This should go to someone real." I accepted it with a nod, too exhausted to do more. And then, finally, the room was empty. Just David and me, standing in the wreckage of what should have been a celebration. The flowers were still beautiful. The cake was still untouched, its 2 sets of tiny fondant booties waiting for children who would never wear them together. The gifts, those that had not been hastily reclaimed by embarrassed guests, sat in uneven piles near the entrance, their pastel wrappings a reminder of the joy that had been stolen and then imperfectly restored. David looked at the silicone belly on the floor, What do we do with that? Throw it away, I said. It's not evidence anymore. Everyone who needed to see it has seen it. He picked it up with 2 fingers, holding it at arm's length as if it might contaminate him. The synthetic flesh caught the light, its hollow interior visible through the opening where it would have fit against Rebecca's real stomach. It looked pathetic now, stripped of its context. A costume without a performer, a lie without an audience. He carried it to the service entrance and shoved it into a trash bin. When he returned, his hands were empty, but his face was still tight to the residue of anger and grief. "It's over," he said. "She's gone. The truth is out." I nodded. "I know." He looked at me, his eyes searching my face. "Are you okay? After all of that? After everything she put you through?" I placed my hand on my belly, feeling Lily move in response to my touch. She was active tonight, rolling and stretching, as if she knew something significant had happened and wanted to remind me that she was here, that she was real, that she was mine. "I'm okay," I said. "I'm better than okay. I'm free." He pulled me into his arms, his cheek pressed against my hair, his breathing uneven. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm sorry my sister is who she is. I'm sorry my family put you through this. I'm sorry I didn't protect you better." I pulled back and looked at him, my husband, my partner, the man who had stood beside me through years of heartbreak and hope and the slow, difficult journey to this moment. "You did protect me," I said. "You believed me. You stood by me. You didn't let her manipulate you the way she manipulated everyone else. That's all I ever needed." He kissed my forehead, a gesture so tender it made my throat tight. "Let's go home," he said. "Let's leave this place and go home." We gathered the remaining gifts, the ones meant for Lily, the ones meant for a child that had never existed but would now be loved by our daughter anyway, and carried them to the car. The Harrington Club faded behind us, its white columns and crystal chandeliers receding into the evening darkness. I did not look back. I had spent too much of my life looking back, hoping for things that were never there. The text arrived at 9:47 p.m. We were home, curled up on the couch, the gifts piled in the corner of the living room, waiting to be sorted. David had made tea, herbal for me, Earl Grey for himself, and we were sitting in the quiet comfort of our own space, letting the tension of the day slowly dissolve. Lily was moving gently inside me, her kicks softer now, as if she too was finally at peace. My phone buzzed on the side table. I glanced at the screen. Rebecca. David saw the name and tensed. "You don't have to read it. You don't owe her anything." I picked up the phone. "I know, but I want to see what she has to say." The message was long, paragraphs of text that filled the screen, a river of words that Rebecca had clearly composed in the aftermath of her exposure. I read it slowly, my eyes moving over the familiar patterns of her manipulation. "Sarah, I don't know what to say. I'm so ashamed. I'm so sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen. I was just so lonely, so invisible, so desperate for someone to see me. When you got pregnant, everyone was so focused on you, and I felt like I was disappearing. I thought if I could just have a little bit of that attention, just for a little while, I would feel better. I didn't think about how it would hurt you. I didn't think about anyone but myself. I know that's selfish. I know it's unforgivable. But I'm begging you, please, please don't tell anyone else what happened. The family knows, and that's bad enough. But if this gets out, if people at work find out, if my friends find out, I'll lose everything. I'll be a laughingstock. Please, Sarah, I'm begging you, keep this between us. I'll do anything. Just please don't ruin my life." I read the message twice. Then I set down the phone and looked at David. She wants me to keep her secret. She's worried about her reputation. She's worried about what people will think. David's jaw tightened. She should have thought about that before she strapped on a fake belly and announced a fake pregnancy at your baby shower. I know. I picked up the phone again and began to type. My fingers moved slowly, deliberately, choosing each word with care. I was not angry. I was not vengeful. I was simply done. Done with the performances. Done with the lies. Done with the endless work of protecting Rebecca from the consequences of her own choices. Rebecca, you tried to steal a moment I waited years for. 7 years of negative tests and failed treatments, and watching other women's bellies swell while mine remained flat. 7 years of smiling through baby showers and first birthday parties, and the casual cruelty of people asking when we were going to start a family. 7 years of hope and heartbreak, and the slow, terrible fear that I might never hold my own child in my arms. And then, when my miracle finally came, when I was finally, joyfully, genuinely pregnant, you couldn't stand it. You couldn't stand that the attention had shifted away from you. So, you bought a costume. You faked symptoms. You announced your pregnancy at my baby shower in front of everyone I loved because you needed to be the center of attention, even on a day that was supposed to be about me and my daughter. I didn't ruin your reputation, Rebecca. I just stopped pretending your lies were the truth. The family knows what you did because you did it in front of them. The evidence was in your hands. The receipt, the ultrasound template, the silicone belly you were wearing. I didn't expose you. You exposed yourself. If you're worried about people finding out, perhaps you should consider not doing things you're ashamed of. Perhaps you should consider telling the truth from the beginning. So there's nothing to hide. I'm not going to broadcast what happened, but I'm not going to lie for you either. If people ask, I'll tell them the truth. You're an adult. You can face the consequences of your own actions. I hope you get help, Rebecca. I hope you figure out why you need to be the center of attention so desperately that you're willing to destroy relationships to get it. But I can't be part of that journey. I have a daughter to raise. I have a family to protect. And I have my own healing to do from years of struggling and hoping and finally receiving the miracle I prayed for. I don't hate you. I don't wish you ill. But I'm done. I'm done pretending. I'm done protecting you from yourself. I'm done letting your lies take up space in my life. Goodbye, Rebecca. I hit send and set down the phone. David was watching me, his expression soft and sad and full of love. That was generous, he said quietly. More generous than she deserved. Maybe, but it was honest, and I'm done being anything but honest. He took my hand and held it against his chest, where I could feel the steady rhythm of his heart. I love you, he said. I love you, and I love Lily, and I'm so sorry my sister tried to take this from you. She didn't take anything, I said. She tried, but she failed, because what we have, is real, and no amount of silicone or fake ultrasounds or theatrical performances can ever change that. We sat together in the quiet of our living room, the evening settling around us like a blanket. Lily moved inside me, a gentle, rolling presence, reminding me that she was here, that she was coming, that the years of waiting were finally, beautifully over. Somewhere across town, Rebecca was reading my message, probably crying, probably composing another plea, another manipulation, another attempt to rewrite the narrative in her favor. Let her. I was done. The chapter was closed. The social exile, self-inflicted like all her wounds, had begun. I placed my hand on my belly and smiled. Hello, Lily, I whispered. Your mama loves you, your daddy loves you, and we're going to give you a life full of truth and joy and all the things that actually matter. She kicked in response, as if she understood. The end.